This video was made possible by CuriosityStream. When you sign up for any subscription at curiositystream.com/HAI, you'll also get access to Nebula, the streaming service that HAI is a part of. One day, I'm going to make a joke that is so bad, so unconscionably corny, that one of you is going to snap. You're going to march right down to your nearest DMV, slam some bills down on the counter, and demand a shiny new vanity plate with SAMSUCKS emblazoned on it. Unfortunately for you, the DMV guy will probably shrug and tell you that while you make a compelling argument, SAMSUCKS is just one of those things that you can't put on a license plate. And before you get any other ideas, you also can't put death threats, names of reproductive organs, suggestions that you're a cop, religious references, swear words, calls for mass genocide, claims that you're wildly intoxicated while driving your car, or, after a small debacle back in 2016, null. Not null as in nothing, but null as in, the word null. Now, it's not that null is secretly offensive or some kind of really vague innuendo. Rather, it has something to do with how police databases work, but in order to explain how, we first have to look at what happened to the one guy who made the terrible mistake of changing his license plate to null. In 2016, security researcher Joseph Tartaro decided to get a dorky pair of matching license plates for him and his wife. Null for him and void for the missus. Like that legal doublet meaning having no binding power or validity. Cute, right? Now, as romantic as that sounds, Romeo here had a secondary motive in mind. He thought that these cute matching license plates could, theoretically, confuse citation systems and enable him and his wife to live out a life of petty crime completely undetected. I mean, what's the last time your pathetic box of chocolates did that? You see, null is a common marker used in all sorts of different computer databases to indicate missing or inapplicable information. Tartaro figured that this also applied to whatever database dealt with California license plate numbers, and unfortunately for him, he was 100% right. Or like 95% right, since the only part he got wrong is what would happen to him if he was right. Instead of cruising under the police's radar, blowing past stop signs, and running down pedestrians without so much as a slap on the wrist, Tartaro started racking up tickets left and right, but not for violations he had committed. In fact, he hadn't committed nearly any violations since he'd registered the plate, and he definitely hadn't committed violations in every single Californian city with dozens of different vehicles over a timeline of 2 years before his plate even existed. Or maybe he had, and lied to every media outlet that interviewed him. Who knows? The simplest explanation, however, is that every time a lazy California cop forgot to plug in the license plate number for a ticket, the system would file that under null, which just so happened to be Tartaro's plate. All told, he racked up $12,049 of fines before he finally managed to put an end to this bureaucratic nightmare, which also makes this the most expensive romantic gesture since that jewel-encrusted toilet seat that Ben Affleck bought J-Lo in 2002. Now, Joseph Tartaro knew he was playing with fire when he got his plate changed, but you know who doesn't know anything about the consequences of exploiting structured query language vulnerabilities? Babies. Specifically babies who were born and given the unfortunate surname of Null before these databases even existed. Across the globe, there are tens of thousands of people whose last name is Null, and much like Joseph Tartaro's license plate, they run the risk of breaking nearly every modern database that they come into contact with. Websites that use registration forms, like bank sites, digital stores, streaming platforms, pizza delivery services, illegal online poker rings, conspiracy blogs, fanfiction blogs, smutty fanfiction blogs, well, pretty much any website really, usually look at the name Null and think, this person doesn't have a name, this is clearly not a real member of a civilized society, under no circumstances can we allow them to join our illegal online poker ring. As a result, the nulls of the world often face crashing websites, unusual errors, or simple declarations that they just don't exist. As far as the internet is concerned, they're ghosts, and the results can range from annoying to downright spooky. Christopher Null, the proprietor of Null Media LLC, for example, often receives mail addressed to Mr. at Media LLC, coincidentally, also the name of Wendover Productions' new money laundering division. Now, while there aren't any simple solutions to these fussy databases and this word that sends them into a spiral of virulent denial worse than my anti-vax neighbors, data analysts have invented some creative workarounds over the years. Take, for example, this place, Null Island. Well, actually, this stock footage isn't Null Island at all because it's a completely imaginary place marked by this sad little buoy. Located at 00, where the equator meets the prime meridian, Null Island was added to certain maps by GIS analysts to detect geocoding errors caused by, you guessed it, the word null. Basically, anytime a computer or smartphone can determine the geographic coordinates of a given location, like when you take a photo with geotagging turned off, it will output the location as null. Certain thick-headed mapping programs can, however, confuse that for 0, 0, a real set of coordinates, and decide to plop you down right on Null Island, which should tell these analysts that unless you swim out to the buoy in the middle of the Gulf of Guinea, these 4 dastardly letters had struck again. Speaking of islands, those weirdos over at Wendover Productions have released another Nebula original documentary about an island. It's called The Final Days of Majuro. Those weirdos at Half as Interesting are also releasing a Nebula original next month, which means the moral of the story is that you should probably get on Nebula. Luckily, you can do so with the best deal in streaming. For just $20 a year, about the cost of a bag of pizza rolls, I'm not really sure, you get access to CuriosityStream, home to thousands of fantastic feature-length documentaries, and Nebula, home to all the special, exclusive projects of your favorite creators, plus ad-free versions of all HAI and Wendover videos. That's a crazy good deal, and it's available only by signing up at curiositystream.com/HAI.